Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fortifying Your Faith. My name is Haston Hanley, your host, and I'm so glad you can be back with us today as we are going to be continuing looking at our discussion on worship. Last time we were together, we discussed the importance of changing our worship to be one of genuine attitude, one of worshiping God in both spirit and truth. And as we are looking at doing that, we need to address the discussion and I guess the elephant in the room as we spend some time discussing and talking about the problem of insincere worship. Because if you look throughout the Bible, there are tons of warnings, there's tons of time that we discuss and can look at what happens when you have insincere worship or you're just kind of going through the motions. Now, I think at some point, a lot of us have been guilty of this. Just maybe our minds weren't focused on worship that day, or maybe we had been going through something. And that's perhaps the most optimistic of all of these different things. But maybe you've just never been involved in worship. Maybe you've never been looking forward towards worship or given your all to God in worship. So we need to be very careful in our life not to do that. We need to be very careful in our spiritual lives that we consistently show what a life of faithfulness looks like, and especially in worship. So, what does sincere worship look like? Well, to understand that, we need to spend a minute and actually discuss insincere worship. If you will, go with me for just a few minutes to the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 6, and verses 1 and 2, as Jesus is discussing with, through the Sermon on the Mount, all of these different warnings and corrections throughout this discussion and this prayer. Jesus is talking to his disciples. He's giving them all of these encouraging statements or correcting statements and says, beginning in verse 1, take heed that you do not your alms or your gift giving before men to be seen of them. It has nothing to do with giving to the poor or making a charitable donation to where people can see you. It's not don't allow people to be seeing you, but it's don't do it so that you are seen. He says, otherwise, you have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Therefore, when you do your alms, do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they already have their reward, or they have their reward. Their focus and their initial goal is not to worship God. It's not to give God the glory and the honor and praise to say, because God has blessed me, I am therefore able to bless others. No, instead, it's just simply saying, look at what I am doing. He's giving us a warning not to fall into the same trap. In fact, further down, he says the exact same thing about prayer. And when thou prayest, verse 5, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues. They love to pray on the corners of the streets, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. That very same idea, discussion, and language. When we take our heart out of worship, when we are doing it for a different reason other than praising God, when we're trying to say, everyone in here needs to look at me rather than at God, we begin to have this problem of insincere worship. You go to another passage we'll spend a few minutes at, 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 12 through 17. This might be a strange one if you haven't read through the book of First Samuel recently, but I want us to spend a few minutes discussing the problem of Eli's sons. To understand the spiritual state of Israel at this point, Eli, the head priest, was getting up in years, is the easiest way to put this, and his sons were following after him. But they were not good men. They were not good priests. They were not good. And the Bible gives them this description. Now, the sons of Eli were the sons of Belial. They knew not the Lord. Now you start to ask yourself an interesting question. Why are they priests, but they don't know God? The worship they were doing is now insincere because they're not doing it for the right reasons. They're not pointing to the right audience. They're just kind of going through the motions. And this is what would happen. Verse 13, the priest's customs with the people was that when any man offered a sacrifice, the priest's servants came, and while the flesh was still in seething with a fish hook, the priest servants came while the fish was in seething with a fish hook of 3 teeth in his hand, and he struck it into the pan, or kettle, or cauldron, or pot, and all that the flesh hook brought up the priest took for himself. So they did in Shiloh unto all the Israelites that came thither. Also, before they burnt the fat, the priest's servants came and said to the man that sacrificed, give flesh to roast for the priests, for he will not have sodden flesh or thee but raw, or of thee but raw. They continually changed what God had already previously set up in the book of Leviticus and set up for the Levites and the priests to follow after. They were having insincere, improper, just bad altogether worship to God. So we have to ask ourselves this question. We might not look like the sons of Eli. We might not have gone that far away from God. Maybe the congregation around us is worshiping God acceptably. Maybe we can look at ourselves and say, I'm not that bad. But are we worshiping God in the manner that he has asked and commanded? With a glad heart, looking to praise, glorify, and honor God. You see, the whole statement of worship is the idea of kissing towards, giving honor and praise and adoration towards the one we're worshiping. Are we doing that to God? Or are we just simply holding back, doing what we want to do instead of glorifying God? Maybe tomorrow, when we get ready for worship, if you're listening to this when it comes out on Saturday, maybe we need to take time to make sure that we are worshiping God truthfully, with the right heart, with the right attitude and mindset, and make sure that we are pushing and striving for sincerity in our worship. And next week, Lord willing, we'll come back together and we will discuss the idea of improper worship. That is, not doing it, maybe doing it with the right heart, but with the wrong actions. But until then, let's continue to study, let's continue to grow so that we can all fortify our faith.